Okay, welcome everybody.
Welcome.
Good to see all your faces. Lot to talk about tonight, and just the usual reminders. Feel free to use the chat to comment. I try to scan the chat to see if there are questions, but if you really have something essential to say or to ask, please use the raise hand function. Don't just wave at us because we can't see everybody on the same screen necessarily, but use the raise hand. And also, if you need closed captioning, that is available. It's under the more button at the bottom of your screen, and then you go to captions and show captions if anybody needs that. Okay, so tonight we've got all kinds of updates, like good news, bad news. And we've got some people on who are going to have a little more information than we do about some of these bills. So we're going to ask them to talk to you. So Paul's going to talk first about some of the bills that we've been opposing.
Well, not just the bills we're opposing, but
Mostly those three.
Yeah, the first three are. HB 12, as I'm sure you know by now, has been pulled and will not be returning. It is dead.
And that was the Advanced Energy Technology Act.
But as happy as we were about that, the $50 million that had been in that bill has been inserted into HB 2, the budget, and passed through the House. So the only way to stop that allocation is through Senate Finance or the Senate floor. It's approved. And what's interesting is they approve it without any definitions for what those advanced technology energy projects are, because that was going to be in HB 12. And, while I was initially really just bummed that they were going to be able to get the money out of this, and that we weren't even going to get to have our day in court to kind of demolish HB 12. It occurred to me afterwards, and Marielle chimed in a little bit with this, that we got quite a bit by killing that bill. Their procurement process can't be violated. It's going to be intact. Their protections for corporate partners, if the project fails, they're not going to be bailed out by the state. And in that clause, there was pretty much an unlimited liability by the state. It could have been hundreds of millions of dollars that we would have had to pay some of these companies. So that is not in play. So we did get some things.
Oh, so that's good.
Somebody said something?
Somebody just said that's
I'm
good.
sorry, I'll mute myself. I said that part's good. Thank you.
Yeah. Okay.
But we will offer guidance for how to oppose the allocation itself in Senate Finance. I have to spend more time in either House Appropriations or Senate Finance to figure out how that works, because it sure seems like public comment is not part of the process. And it happens so quickly. It's like somebody calls a bill. Does anybody want to table it? No. Does anybody have a motion? Motion, done, gone. And
Before you can even
like object or anything.
Yeah.
So
okay.
Very concerned about that. But the
allocation. Real quick, Paul, on that, we've been told with HSA to contact our representative who's on Senate Finance to ask her to amend HB right now about to put some funds in. So is that something that might work to contact Senate Finance if we have reps on there to say, get rid of this versus putting in? Does that make sense?
Well, I don't know that they're going to get rid of it, but they could get rid of the funding for it. And so we will be looking to allies for guidance on how to exactly to frame that. But you're right. And we also would strongly say that it makes no sense to wait until the hearing. I mean, they're going to be talking about this behind the scenes. And the problem, the much better thing is for the people on the committee to know in advance that there's a lot of opposition to this. And it really kind of all segues together in a kind of connect the dots kind of way. When you think about it, it's like so many of the things that go on in the legislature are not what they seem. And it makes it so hard. You can't trust what you're getting. I mean, we're going to be opposing the brackish water reuse bill. That's SB 493. And I wrote a blog about that today. It was just published an hour or two ago.
Right, and it's going to be heard tomorrow morning. If you, I hope you all get the alerts. An alert went out around 4:30 today, talking about that and telling you what to do.
The bottom line, the way the blog started was like, you know, in a perfect world, we'd of course want to study any way we can capture, reuse, preserve, conserve water. We're in a frigging drought, for God's sakes. But our bottom line is, I don't think we can trust that any study that's done will be used in a genuine way, in an honest way, by this administration and her cabinet. I mean, you can see what they've done with hydrogen research. They just have avoided anything that was inconveniently pointed to it's not working. And so I have great fears they do the same thing with this water. Oh, you know, the report comes back, you know, and the EPA had issued, and I referenced that in the blog. The EPA had issued a report on produced water with alarming concerns that that the technology just isn't there for trying to treat that water.
And this gives $50 million to various entities, including the Mining and Technology Institute in New Mexico State and the Environment Department and one other that I'm maybe Environment and somebody else, but to study how this water can be cleaned and used. And also they are also going to determine what the acceptable levels are in the water. I mean, you know, and they're talking about pumping it back into the aquifers too. So, you know, no way. I don't think we can put up with that. What else did you want?
Can I just suggest though, you call it produced water, which is just an outright lie. That's the industry term. It's fracking waste. I think it'd be helpful if you refer to it as fracking waste, also known as produced water, because it bears this, it's just like water, just like apple juice is water, you know, or like, you know, so many other chemicals like oil is water. There's, you know,
anyway. I tried to say that in the alert today, just said it's toxic water, you know, it's a byproduct of fracking. And
it's a combination of, a byproduct of all the crap they put into the ground, which we don't know what it is, but it's also a byproduct of the stuff that's, you know, 1,000, 5,000 feet down, which should never be up here, which is, you know, all that crazy stuff, including radioactivity, which they cannot remove from water. So,
yeah.
So anyway, we'll be opposing that pretty vigorously tomorrow. But it's just too bad that we can't trust our stakeholders to tell us the truth.
Well, like Jay had said in the chat, they just keep introducing these false climate solutions like over and over again. It's like, come on, wake up. You know, what are they doing? All right, let's talk. We got a lot to talk about. So would you want to talk about HB 431?
I'll let Marielle talk about that.
Okay, HB 431 is local government utility service restrictions. And Marielle Nanasi from New Energy Economy is here to talk to us about that. So can you just take a couple minutes, Marielle?
Yeah. Hi, everybody. Thanks for having me. This is a preemption bill, and it's designed to kill local choice energy. That's what it's designed to do in this legislative session. But it's also potentially, but the history of preemption has been really bad. And it started in the 80s around sanctuary cities and minimum wage laws, and it's moved in the last 30 years. Basically, it is fossil fuels, reactionary, conservative, right-wing think tanks that this is essentially an ALEC bill, and it's been done. These preemption bills have been done all across the United States. This is just one form of it. But it would prevent not only local choice energy, but they could say, if there's a building code that a community wanted to have and said, hey, we want, which there are in places, hey, we want to require that every house has to have solar equivalent mandated in the building code, or energy efficiency kinds of things. It could prevent that, because this bill says that we won't have any preference for an alternative fuel and against gas. And so I just wanted to let you know about that. I think, were you going to put something in the chat, Paul, for people to see more? If people want to go to newenergyeconomy.org, we just did a blog about this. But that's the history of it, and we want to kill it. And that's on Friday morning in House Government, Election, and
Indian Affairs.
So that's up
Yeah.
Friday morning at 8:30. Another thing that's really, you were talking, and I think said really articulately, is all these false solutions. It's really pretty upsetting that this is not just false solutions and Orwellian names and things like that from the Republicans, but from the Democrats as well. And another one of those is the Clean Fuels Standard. And that is up also in the same committee. That's 426. It's called the Clean Fuel Standards. And what's important about that is it doesn't do things like set emissions targets or require, electric vehicles or work on public transportation. It is an offset bill. And this is really, really dangerous. There's a whole critique that Friends of the Earth put out, a really great piece that you could just Google, or maybe I will put it in the chat for you in a minute. And it talks about what a farce these things are. This is, it's not, it's basically offsetting. And, oh, you put it in there. Well, there you go. Thanks, Raylan. This explains it in more detail. So I hope that the whole No False Solutions Coalition is coming out and opposing the clean fuel standards. We need things that actually reduce emissions instead of pretending and creating carbon markets and offset schemes and all kinds of crazy stuff. So you can go there and send an email immediately, quickly, and we'd really appreciate you standing strong against it. And, I just want you to know that there's the people on it are people that we often think of as our friends.
Yeah, I
So
wanted to
Paul
let-
pasted something in the chat, but I think he didn't get it quite.
Well, what happened was I had something in my, what do you call it? When you've got something copied,
Clipboard.
clipboard. And then I went to
Oh.
get something from Marielle and I didn't get it. And
Okay.
so then when I pasted a big ass long thing.
Okay, so if there's something you want people to
I'll
know-
do it. I'll put it in.
Yeah, I
Thank
was
you so
gonna ask you to do it, Marielle. That would be great. And Ralph, you've had your hand up. I'm sorry, we didn't see you before. Go ahead.
Thank you. Yeah, my comment was going to be regarding when we were talking about the brackish water reuse. So I'm late to the game on this. Thank you, Paul, for giving me a call ahead of time about this. I looked at the bill, I looked at the FIR, and I went back and looked at HB 546, the Produced Water Act. And I just want to bring into the conversation that they don't actually ever say anything in this very short 3-page bill that would suggest that it's produced water. And it says brackish water. They never define brackish water. But I just want to bring up that. So I have composed a letter to all members of the Senate Conservation Committee to please, at the very outset, ask the bill sponsor, which is George Munoz, to define what he means by brackish water. I wouldn't want us to get completely up in arms that they're talking about produced water reuse, when brackish water does have a definition, meaning from deep wells in this state that is highly saline water. And I just wanted to bring that up.
You know, I'm glad you did, because that was my concern today. I said to Paul, I said, you know, if you read this brackish water, well, that'd be great if they can desalinate and reuse that water. But, you know, I guess there are many people who believe that it's just sort of in disguise, that maybe they will deal with the brackish water, but that definition will include the.
So and then just a little bit more is that, so you're right, Roxanne, it doesn't say that, but it could be disguised as, and I wouldn't, you know, I'm not gonna rule that possibility out, but they need to define that in the bill. They need to say it clearly in the hearing on what well, that's what I'm saying. They need to say clearly. Who knows what who knows what George Munoz will do. But I was just alerting all the members of the Senate Conservation Committee, please have that defined at the outset. They also say nothing in there about disposal. There's a huge burden of treatment of brackish water in terms of byproduct for disposal, and they could be glossing over that. All right, enough said. Thank you.
Okay, yeah, thanks for that. So I guess for any of you who haven't written to that committee yet, or if you're going to offer public comment in the morning, maybe that's one of the questions. Do you plan on including quote unquote produced water in your definition of brackish water? See what they say. And like Jay said, it's Munoz, so we should expect the worst. Okay. Let me see. We just wanted to mention, and I think we've said this in a alert, that the study for Medicaid managed care structure was killed yesterday in House Appropriations and Finance. And it's an example of trying to put a bill through. There's no money allocated for it in the budget, so they just automatically killed it.
It's frustrating because we've known this for a while, and yet we wind up in this position year after year where we've got an ally who's got a really good bill, but they haven't gotten it through the interim process to where it's in some agency budget, and then it just dies. But there's a move afoot to try and get the funding, an amendment to HB2 in the Senate Finance Committee, and to include funding for 264.
Okay. And so if there's anything we can do, we'll
I'm
find
working
out
with
about
Barry
that.
Feldblum on.
Okay. Well, here's some of these we may have talked about last week, but I'll just cover them really quickly. Bills that seem to be really moving along and are probably going to be passed. SB1, Regional Water System Resiliency. It passed the Senate floor 33-0, and it was on the House floor today. I'm not sure what happened with that. If anybody knows, speak up. SB 53, that's Steinborn's bill, storage of certain radioactive waste. That passed on the Senate floor 21-13. It passed House Government Elections and Indian Affairs, excuse me, on Monday, 6-3 party lines. So it's just got one more committee to go before it goes to the House floor, and then it's a done deal. It has to go through House Judiciary, but it looks like everybody's on board with that, and that's going to get through.
And it doesn't look like it's been amended, so there wouldn't be a conference. That's the other thing I was going to say, that Mary Feldblum, for the health security and her two bills, she feels like in conference they might be able to, like if there's a difference between the two bills, the Senate version and the House
The budgets.
that they can do that in conference and get the funding for it. It's not very much funding at all.
How much is it? Do you remember?
460,000 for the two.
Okay. Let me see. Oh, HB 7, it was being debated in Senate Health and Public Affairs, we were on, Paul was listening to it, I was listening to it a little bit. It wasn't over and we had to turn it off to get on this Zoom. So I don't know if anybody has any, that was, looked like it was going to be a long discussion. So we'll just have to check tomorrow. There'll probably be something in the newspaper about that. But it did pass on the House floor 38-31, but that's relatively close. So if it passes Senate Health and Public Affairs, it still has to go to Senate Judiciary and then the Senate floor, but that would be it. So it's, you know, a House bill that seems to be moving along fairly quickly. HB for the voting rights protections passed on the House floor 41-26, and then it passed its first Senate committee, Senate rules, on Monday, 5-2. So that's good. Now you'll remember that's the bill that last year was held up on the very last day on the was it the Senate floor or the House? Sure, yeah. And Republican Scherer was going on and on talking about baseball and just whatever he could pull up out of his sleeve just to run out of time. And he was successful.
Yeah, I remember that well, Roxanne. Can you repeat the number on that one, please?
It's HB 4, voting rights
Okay,
protections.
right.
It's
Okay.
considered basically the omnibus voting rights bill, and it's got you
Right.
know
Okay, just checking.
Indian
Thank
voting rights and early voting
Right.
and
Right.
felon voting rights and everything in there.
Ballot boxes and so forth.
Right.
Thank you.
HJR2 legislative changes. It was on the House floor today. I didn't have a chance to watch the House session. Does anybody know? That's the one that lengthens the even year session. Rich?
It was at the top of the list is all I saw.
Yeah, right. Okay, well, we'll let you know about that. We'll probably find out by tomorrow.
And Roxanne, can I ask now, since HJ8 is often paired with HJ2, does anybody have any idea why HJ8 was on the House floor, third reading, whatever that's supposed to mean, and then re-referred to the last committee in the House? Is any? I missed
right.
whatever
Yeah.
happened today.
And it passed in House Judiciary.
For the second time.
Yeah, I don't know. Oh, that's interesting. Yeah, it was on the, yeah, now that you mentioned that, but it did pass today. That's all I know. We can try to find out why that was bouncing around.
Does anybody understand the second reading and third reading and how that plays into all of this?
Well, I was told, because I called to talk to one of the committee secretaries, I don't know, a few weeks ago, because I was wondering. She said they all have to go to the third reading. It's just like a formality. It's in the Constitution, has to be read 3 times. And only after it's in the third reading can it then be debated.
The first reading is when it's introduced. The second reading is when you get a committee report, I believe, or you get committee reports from a report from the other chamber. So now it's in your court. And then the third reading is when it's done with that chamber's
It's
committees.
ready for a vote.
Right.
Right, and Javier said that it was being re-referred to the House Judiciary upon consultation with the sponsors. So anybody know what was going
Maybe
on
they
there?
needed to amend something. I don't know.
That's what I was thinking.
Yeah, we can look into that. We'll let you know either via blog or alert or next week on this call. Excuse me. So let me see some bills that are kind of stuck and not looking very good because, you know, just as a reminder, if a House bill hasn't got through the House floor to the Senate yet, with only 2.5 weeks left, it's and vice versa. If a Senate bill hasn't passed on the Senate floor and started in House committees, you know, we're running.
So don't overstate it. It's
I
possible.
mean, it's possible, yes, but it's not, you know, it's a ways, they still have a ways to go. So the Water Trust Fund, that's SB 57. Maybe somebody knows about this, but it passed in Senate Conservation, but it's been in Senate Finance for over a month now. So that does not look good. Okay, HB 25, that passed in House Commerce and Economic Development, but it hasn't gone anywhere for a month. That's the minimum wage bill.
Did you hear
So-
anything more on that, Rich, in terms of why Chris Chandler had pulled it?
No, I thought you said that you thought that she didn't have the votes, but I was gonna ask
Right.
you the same
My
question.
guess. I was trying to, I don't know how to get in touch with her.
We can
No.
try to look into that. Sorry, we should have done that
It
this
doesn't
week.
look hopeful, though. I don't,
No, I mean, it's just, it has a long ways to go with only 2.5 weeks left. So
Yeah.
I don't know. That's unfortunate, but SB 165, local choice energy has had no hearing. So I don't know. Does anybody, do you want to say anything about that? Do you want to say anything, Mary?
Well, there were language, Cervantes never saw a bill he couldn't make better. And he had issues with the bill, and big issues, not about the concept. He voted for it. It actually isn't still stuck in Senate rules.
No,
It
it's
passed
in
Senate
Senate
rules,
Judiciary.
stuck in Senate Judiciary, but he has been working with the bill sponsor on the language, and apparently they're close to having a committee substitute.
Hmm.
And then
I could just say, really quickly, I met with Cervantes for an hour on Monday, and we're meeting with him tomorrow afternoon. Again, I spent 4 hours yesterday working on the bill, so it's dramatically changed. And I actually appreciate it. So because I feel like a couple of things. One is, I do think that if Senator Cervantes, if we can come to an agreement and he calls it, we have time to get it from the Senate to the House, because I believe that if it passes the Senate, which if he gives his blessing and it passes judiciary, it'll probably pass the Senate. That's number one. Number two is, if that happens, and I think it'll only go to, they're only, sending bills across to one committee now. And I think it's going to go to House Energy. And I think Matthew McQueen will call it right away. So I do think that there's still time for that.
Great.
But even if it didn't, if we went into the next session with having a bill with Senator Cervantes's blessing and, his words, and maybe even him becoming a sponsor, that could be enormous, an enormous help. So just wanted to give you that.
Okay, great. Thank you for that. Oh, I thought somebody had their hand up, but I guess not. Also, the Green Amendment, no hearings. Do you know anything about that? Does anybody know anything about what's going on with the Green Amendment?
actually don't know.
Both
very
bills,
much.
the SJR 6 in the Senate and HJR 4 in the House, have not gone anywhere since they were introduced. So
We were
Does-
told via email once from Maya that they were expecting a friendly decision by the AG that was going to help clear up some confusion. And I don't know, might not be using the right word, but that was over 10 days ago.
right, yeah, I think that the Raul Torres is in support at this point, but he needed something from them, and I remember seeing that too. Yeah, so I don't know. I guess we'll look into that tomorrow and get some information out to you, whatever we can learn.
I'm not optimistic about that one.
Yeah, well, we shall see. The other one I wanted to talk a little bit about, this was in today's alert, and that's the Public Health and Climate Resiliency Bill. It's HB 42 in the House and SB 5, I think, yeah, in the Senate. So I sent a note. I don't know if Charles Goodmacher is on here tonight. If you're on, Charles, unmute and you can talk about this. If you're not, I'll just say, check the alert. If you don't get the alerts, I mean, you really should, but you can go on to the website, and if you go to the NM legislation tab, right at the top of that page is a link to all of the alerts. so you can get the information there. But it basically has not been had any hearings in over a month as well. They're going to make, excuse me, what he called a last ditch effort to get funding into the overall budget. So they have an action. They just, if you look at the alert, they have some wording they want you to write to the Senate Finance Committee. But they also have a group of MDs here in New Mexico who are going to show up tomorrow before the Senate Finance Committee. I mean, because it's not on the agenda, just to make to talk to Munoz. That group is New Mexico Health Professionals for Climate Action, but they're asking us to write to the Senate Finance Committee members and ask them to please put some money in the budget for this bill. Again, it's one of those circumstances where they didn't get the money in the budget in advance. So I you know, when you hear these committees, House Appropriations and Finance, and I think Senate Finance too, a lot of those committee members who just say it's not in the budget table, you know, they don't even want to consider it. They don't even want to talk about it. If you didn't do your homework or whatever it's required, you know, we don't want to make people feel bad, but you can't, you know, they won't even look at your bill. So.
And so that's why I think writing to the legislators in advance, whether it's in the Senate Finance or House Appropriations, and trying to reach somebody who becomes somewhat of an advocate and says, no, I really think we need to put money into this bill. It's not very much money. I mean, we just got to do a better job in the interim hearings.
Yeah. Just some other little updates. HB 100, that's the 14-day waiting period for firearm sales, was on the House floor today. You know, we just can't watch everything. So I don't know what happened. If anybody knows anything about what happened with HB 100 today, please, you know, speak up. SB 11, paid family and medical leave, was on the Senate floor. It was pretty far down on the list, but I'll check on all these tomorrow, and if there was any action, any vote, we'll get that out to you. I hope that one passes. Well, I hope they all pass. Yeah, HJR 8, I think we talked about, maybe we didn't talk about that one. That's the other legislative, modernizing the legislature bill. That's legislative salaries. That was in House Judiciary today, and it passed 6-3. So I think it now goes to the House floor. And then the law enforcement and public safety telecom bill, that's SB 19, was in Senate Judiciary today. It was kind of far down on the list too. That was and these were all afternoon hearings, so they could still be going on. And I think we talked about this last week. The bill writers, some of the people from Indivisible Santa Fe, have been working with Mo Maestas, and he seems to think, you know, that this bill can still get through. So we hope so. Yeah, just if you have anything to say, why are we in support of SB 19? SB 19, it's law enforcement, public safety. It completely revamps the training, law enforcement training across the state, and it connects all the different agencies. And what else, Paul?
Well, it also puts in the statute that police departments and law enforcement agencies have to provide incident data to the state. It's voluntary now. And so you can't identify if there's a problem in a county of multiple violent arrests or something like that, or injuries to people who are being intervened at home over a behavioral health issue. And so that data would be required to be provided. And there would be like standards established around the training that is being offered to law enforcement officers, so that they can measure whether the behaviors change as a result of that.
And it also encompasses training for EMTs and for 911 emergency responders.
You know, part of what really drew my attention to that was, in amongst it all, was important communication throughout the state. That is incredibly important, and it's sort of in there in amongst it. And it looks as if it's going to be, I really hope that sees some traction. I think that's important. I just also want to make a comment about what you were saying earlier about being prepared. Something that I've been noticing, and Paul, you were great when I stopped you in a sort of frustrated moment. I guess it was last week or something. And I said, gosh, Cervantes keeps sort of stalling on everything. And you corrected me. You said, no, he often is accurate. That really helped turn me around. Thank you so much. And I think he's actually surprisingly positive, but I don't understand when he isn't. I don't quite get it. But and I'm sorry to take a little bit of time here. One of the other things I've been following is the 3 or 4 young women who are pushing for help with having stuff available for free for women, and their menstrual stuff.
The products in the schools. Yeah.
Yeah, that's right. And it's mostly focused on that. I had a great chat with them, and they were so impressed that somebody knew what they were doing. And I said, well, you're working pretty hard, but let me tell you something. It's going to get stalled in judicial if you don't have a very clear writing of the bill. That's what I keep seeing Mr. Cervantes doing. And it's legitimate, actually. If it's all fluffy and sort of vague, well, they were taking notes. They said, Mrs. West, thank you so much. We are going to tighten that bill. I don't know exactly what they're going to do with it, but they told me it felt great to be recognized. And they also said, well, in a way, and these are these teenagers, they're great. They said, in a way, Mr. Cervantes is right. It should be a good bill. So anyway, thank you.
Sure. Yeah. Thank you.
Well, and I think one of the things this points to is the low level or the inconsistency in the production of bills by the Legislative Council services. I've heard over and over again that, the bill just is incomprehensible, or it violates state law here, and here. And then it winds up getting stalled in Senate Judiciary, or it doesn't even get through a committee because they know that it's going to get killed in Senate Judiciary. So, I mean, it's something that's got to be fixed.
Yeah. And I have something to say about that, but I just want to finish a thought about, excuse me, SB 19. And that is, I'm going to guess that hearing is still going on. That's Senate Judiciary, speaking of that, because Cindy Paps is, a volunteer, and she's often on these calls, and she's also an indivisible Santa Fe person. So she was going to be there today and stick it out. And she's taking notes. She's observing for us as well. And she's not on this call. So
She's always on.
she was worried that it was going to run long. She wouldn't be able to be on. So I'm guessing that's still going on. So speaking of Senator Cervantes and his perfectionism, there are some gun bills. One of I think it was Senator Sol's assault weapon ban that did not make it through. It was tabled in Senate Judiciary on Monday, and because Cervantes says, we don't want to pass a bill that then the federal law is going to say is unconstitutional.
Not the federal law, the Supreme Court.
But the Supreme Court, okay. But there's the other bill that was introduced by Andrea Romero in the House, and that's HB 101. But those sponsors are saying, well, actually Miranda Viscoli, maybe there was an article in the New Mexican this morning about this. It's different than Sol's bills because it doesn't just ban all automatic and semi-automatic. It's semi-automatic. It only bans assault weapons. So they think that still might be able to pass, but we'll have to just wait and see on that. Let me see. Some of these are on our second tier, but just since we're talking about gun bills, HB 9, unlawful access to firearms by a minor, passed in the House, 3732. And it also passed Senate Judiciary on Monday, 6-3. So that's a good sign. It was in Senate Finance.
Why would it go to Senate Finance?
I don't know.
There's no money in the bill.
Unless that's a typo on my part. I don't know. We'll figure that out. But it seems to be moving along. And then also SB 44, which is prohibiting firearms at polling places. Duh, of course. Passed the Senate 28-9. So that got bipartisan support. And it passed House Government Elections and Indian Affairs on Monday, 4-3, basically on party lines. Excuse me. All right. Jay, you're saying that's a cop-out. I'm not sure what that was in.
That's
that
just
was
about when they say it won't pass federal, it's against federal law or.
Oh, yeah.
Why don't we
Okay.
let the Supreme Court take care of that instead of anticipating it? I mean, that was the reason we
Yeah.
passed the abortion
Yeah.
decriminalization, was because we knew the Supreme Court would do something. So maybe we need to put pressure on the Supreme Court to do the right thing.
Yeah. All right. I think we wanted to say a little bit about tax bills. There were several tax bills that we are supporting. And usually what happens with those individual tax bills is they just get consumed into a big tax omnibus bill. So Paul checked in with Amber at Voices for Children. And what did she tell you about the tax bill?
She said there's $1 billion built into HB2 for tax reform, and that can cover a wide variety of things. And so that basically various stakeholders in the House, the Senate, and the governor's office are negotiating on what will be included in the omnibus. But each piece relates to the others, and so there's going to be a lot of moving parts. But she is feeling very good about the child tax credits emerging in tax capital gains, and optimistic about PIT and CIT reforms. So that would be getting pretty much everything they asked for in a in a year with a big surplus. To get that kind of stuff done in taxes would be amazing.
Yeah, and if you look at any of the data around child income tax credits, it's amazing how much kids benefit and how much it raises people out of poverty. I mean, it is a pretty cool thing to do. So I hope that we can pass that. Yeah, Rich. You're muted.
You're muted, Rich.
If we look at HB2 in its current form, will we see anything about taxes, or we have to wait another week? I mean, anybody have any time about timing? Paul, do you?
I don't know, but I'll text Amber right now and see if she can get back to us while we're still on. Because I have looked for we were able to find the individual on page 196. We were able to find the individual allocation for the advanced technology projects. And but I don't know whether you can find child tax credit. It would seem like if you didn't, what good would it be for a budget? You can't adjust anything if you don't have line items.
Or the various income tax proposals for that matter. And I had another question. I don't mean to get off the taxation, but we were talking about Munoz and Senate Finance. The Housing Trust Bill, SB 140, it passed its first committee unanimously. And it's been in Senate Finance for probably a month now. So
Right.
Does anybody have any idea what's happening and how we can get them off the dime? I mean, it just seemed like a no-brainer.
Is that Andrea Romero's bill? Is she one of the sponsors?
We could. No, I think it's Natalie. Let me look here.
We could
Nancy Rodriguez.
Okay. Do you have a relationship with Nancy Rodriguez?
Not a good. Well, yeah, I have her cell phone number.
We can look into that and try to find something out. Yeah, I noticed that too. That just sitting there doing nothing. Yeah, thanks, Rich. We'll see if we can figure out what's going on with that. And Michael, thanks, Michael. He confirmed that HB 9 was in Senate Finance this morning, and no, there's no money in it. So why did it go to Senate
That
Finance?
was my question.
Right, we don't know. One of those mysteries. Yeah, Ray Ellen, you said you had something you wanted to share. We've got time.
I just have a funny story. So I called Cynthia Borrego about HB 100, the 14-day waiting period, and asked her to support it. And she told me she didn't think she was going to support it because a gun store owner had told her there was already a 4-day waiting period.
4 or 14?
14.
Oh,
Yeah,
okay.
the gun store owner had told her there was already a 14-day waiting period, so she wasn't going to support the bill. And I said, you know, respectfully, I'm positive that that is incorrect. And she said, well, I'll, you know, I don't have time right now, but I need to talk to this gun store owner before I believe what you're telling me. And I'm like, well, I'll be happy to call him tomorrow because I know you'll be busy. And she said, oh, that'd be great. And then can you text me what he says? So I called and said, you know, I'm in the market for a handgun, but somebody told me there's a 14-day waiting period. Is that true? And he says, no, they're trying to pull that on us, but it's not true. And I recorded it and sent it to her.
Wow.
And now she's a yes.
Oh,
She lied to her.
Wow.
Found out today she's a yes on HB 100, but it was kind of hysterical. Like a simple internet search. Is there a 14-day waiting period in New Mexico to buy a gun? Would have popped up an answer right away, and she didn't even think to do that. Anyway.
That's a great story. And you know, it's just, it's scary how much that happens where they just don't know. And so, or some person tells them something and they go, oh, okay. You know, without checking on anything. It's
I was gobsmacked. It was hysterical. But anyway, that's my funny story. We got to watch her.
And the report's not coming back in 3 days. And at that point, the gun store can sell it to the person, no questions asked.
Yeah.
We need that passed.
yeah. Well,
I mean,
that's
classic reason for why we need more.
why we need what?
Somebody broke up there.
Yeah, I didn't
I
hear.
think that they were going to say classic reason why we need staff and salaried employees.
Yes, definitely.
Legislators.
Yeah, professionalize the legislature. Marielle, go ahead.
So the last thing I wanted to share with you all is that we passed HB 142. That's the San Juan Generating Facility and Mine Remediation and Restoration Study Act on the House floor, 53-5. So that's great. Just so you have an idea why this is so important. Of course, people know that P&M San Juan Generating Station bill, P&M San Juan Generating Station coal plant closed after 50 years of operation. They have produced more than 60 million tons of coal ash. It's extraordinarily toxic and radioactive. They've been dumping it in unlined pits. There's a study by Earth Justice that said that 91% of all coal plants are contaminating the waterways. So I imagine that, and I mean, I know actually that P&M is among them, and it didn't include P&M, a study of P&M. So we're asking for an independent, comprehensive assessment. It has been sent to Senate Finance. So I spoke to Senator Munoz today and asked him to call it. He said he'd look at it. So what I'm asking you all to do is write to that whole committee.
Senate Finance, yeah.
Senate Finance, ask them to call it and ask them to pass it. Because what we are asking for in the bill is an independent third party assessment of all contamination, not just coal ash, at the site. and then a remediation plan and a restoration plan to be conducted with community input, and then to report back to the legislators for as long as it takes to get full remediation and restoration in place. So I'm going to put something about that in the chat, and
HB 142, is that right, Muriel?
HB
Oh, okay.
142.
Yeah, somebody
And I'm going
just-
to put it in the chat, and then if you all want to just click, of course, an individual email is best, but you know, everybody's working really hard. So you can just click on that and ask them to do it. So thank you so much.
Thanks.
Thank you,
I
Linda.
just got a text from Cindy Paps, who was sitting in on the hearing for, oh, whoops. No, not as, she's in there for SB 19, but wow. There's another bill, SB 116. It's, God, and I'm gonna forget. Can you look up SB 116? So I asked her, since you're in there for SB 19, can you listen to SB 16 as
It's
well?
SB
116. I think it's a gun bill. It's on our, it must be, hold on a second, and we'll tell you, but, oh, 21 years old to purchase or possess. Yeah, thank you, Michael.
And what happened? to it?
4-4 table on due pass. I don't really understand this. And on recommendation. Stewart suggests going back and making amendments. So it's stuck still in the committee officially, and it's up to the chair to resubmit it.
I think that means that it was a 4-4 vote, which means it's tabled because you didn't get, you need a majority.
Well, but it sounds like they're still talking about bringing it back.
Well,
with
anytime a bill
amendments.
is tabled, this chair can bring it back, or whoever voted to table it.
Okay. So SB 19 is probably, she's going to be in that committee hearing until probably midnight tonight. I don't know. That may be only a slight exaggeration. Excuse me.
So I just wanted to, we're getting close to the end of the day and, or the end of the hour.
And we
I
want
wanted to point out something, and that is that the bill that Marielle just mentioned wasn't on our list. And what that points to is that, we started with the intention of keeping it to 12 bills, then 12 to 15, then 15 to 20, then 20 to 25. We're 28 now, if you include those we oppose. And part of what happens is you initially say, well, we got to support this bill, we're going to support this bill. And the early bills get the better, our attention immediately. And then bills that come on later, we're just going like, what are we going to do? If we add this, it's another, and what you'd have to realize is it's another number we have to track in terms of when it's going to be heard. And then it's another thing where we've got to get hearing observers and we've got to summarize the bill and things like that. And so it's not just like, oh, we don't support the bill. It's that there's a lot of work involved in supporting a bill. And, we just can't get to it all. It just kills me when I see some of these bills that we're not doing anything about.
well, and especially the bills that are in the higher numbers, because by the time we start getting into the 400s, we're already sort of maxed out. And then some of these, this is, I always find interesting, the bills that we wind up opposing, they're so obscure that we basically have to wait until somebody else who's, focusing on those bills tells us or gets out into the public, oh, we need to oppose this bill, because it's impossible to read every bill and figure it out and to know, is this good? Is this bad? I mean, it's just,
You all don't need to apologize because you're doing a great job with the energies you have and the context you have. And thank you so much. And having Mariel here tonight then brought this forward. So, had you not done that, we wouldn't maybe not even been aware of that. Because I'm the same way. I've got a stack of papers, probably 6 inches high, of meetings and Zooms and notes I'm taking and bills. And I think I have some of them in my head, but like you, I have to go back and look at them. So thank you so much for what you're doing. You are making things so much better, really.
Yeah,
All right,
it's
well,
terrific.
thank
I
you.
want to say that too. And I have a quick question. When I'm writing into a whole bunch of people, yes, support, what I've decided to do is to have everybody on the committee be BCC'd, be blind copy, except for the chairman. And I've decided that that's an okay way to do it. Everybody else who gets it, quote unquote, individually, will see it's also going to the chair. Does anybody think that's a good idea?
That seems fine. I know we had at one point a year or two ago told people don't do a big group email, but I guess if you're BCCing,
Well, I just want to say something really quickly, that what I do is I write a letter to the chair, I copy it, and then after I do that, it just takes a few minutes to send it to everybody else individually. And I have a feeling that may be more effective. I don't know. But
an individual email, yeah.
Yeah, does anybody have any, Marielle, do you have any
We've got-
experience with those one-click, like, send it? It seems like that's going to be so transparently generated by machine that it's going to not really help very much.
And
even
so, and I know you have your hand up, so you can answer Paul's question and then say what you're gonna say, and then Jay's got his hand up too, so we want to leave him a little time for that. Go ahead, Marielle.
Yeah, I'll be really quick. I mean, I just, like, I have to just tell you that on the HB 142, I wrote like 10 different express emails for people to have to, and they're different. And so on 142. So yes, maybe all 40 of you will send this one email on 142, but then there's going to be another, like Ray Ellen's going to send out a whole different one. So, you know, we're all doing the best we can. And, you know, if we had the time, we would send out 1,000 individual, but we don't. So we just, you know, there's just so much. So, and I do want to also thank you all so much for doing it, for emailing and calling, and Roxanne and Paul. It's just, we made a difference. Like, we together and with a whole bunch of other groups killed HB 12. I think it matters. So yeah, I just want to say, like, it really, it's, and also, the unity and resistance also matters. So I think that's important. Speaking of which, something else that is not on our radar, but you probably all saw it on the front page of the Santa Fe New Mexican. It was also on the front page of the Gallup Independent. But Native women's groups have reached out to New Energy Economy specifically to oppose the nomination of James Mountain.
Right.
He's the cabinet secretary. It's really important, you all, because like, there's some senators like Shannon Pinto and Linda Lopez and Antoinette Cedillo Lopez, who are really trying to get him both. We have to call the nomination in the Senate rules. So we have to ask that it be called and then rejected. Because if it's not called, then he could be an acting cabinet secretary for 4 years.
That can go on for years, right?
Yeah. And so what I just want you to all know is, I'm not saying, I mean, I've been a criminal defense lawyer for many, many years. So I'm not saying that somebody who's just been accused and has not been found guilty is, you know, we should say that. I'm not saying that he did the kidnapping and raping. I am not going to say that. And I do know that many, many women who work on the missing, murdered Indigenous task force, women's task force, don't want him to be the nominee and feel completely uncomfortable and have been actually intimidated by this whole situation. So regardless of whether he did it or not, it's gotten to such a fever pitch that his nomination no longer engenders confidence. And so I think
we should support the women on that task force.
I think we have to do that.
That's
and
enough.
Michelle, for some unknown reason, is continuing to support his nomination, which seems crazy to me. So
not the first time she did something.
Yes,
crazy.
exactly. So please write Senate rules, say that you want the confirmation called, and then you want it to be rejected. So thank you
we can
so much.
we can put something about that in the alert too, so people understand a little bit better.
Jen, you're up.
So we've got 4 people with their hands up. It's 7 o'clock now, so I'm just gonna apologize and say we're probably gonna run over, but we want to get people, we want to hear what people have to say. If you gotta go, we understand. If you want to stay and listen, great. Okay, go ahead, Jay.
Everybody's
Yeah.
gonna stay for Jay.
Yeah, so just to point out again that this is another year that the legislature is doing no good on climate and a lot of bad things they're trying to do on climate. You know, in a time when we have, you know, maybe a year or two left to avoid some of the worst catastrophes humans have ever seen on this planet. So it's really frustrating to see that they're not doing nothing. And I think that we need to plan to do something off after this session to call these people out for their gross lack of competency in doing anything to really save life on Earth. It's disgusting. Thank you.
I totally agree with you. I hope somebody can come up with some really amazing, effective action to get things to change.
Karen, you're up.
Karen, go ahead. You're muted.
You're muted.
As far as writing to legislators, I've been told that a whole lot of them are just so swamped now, they are not reading their emails.
Mhm.
That it's that point in the legislative session where they stop, a lot of them, if they ever
Will
did.
do, yeah. So
So
if you
maybe
live next
what's
door,
best is to, unless there's a specific message that has to be worded, to maybe just call and tell their secretary to ask them, please vote yes, or please vote no. That may be more effective. Because the
Right,
secretary.
or,
can
oh,
tally.
okay. I was gonna say, or you can just put whatever, vote yes on in the subject line. So if they're just skimming, they at least see that if we're not.
If they
opening.
skim, if they even skim. But if
Yeah,
you tell
yeah.
the secretary, she keeps a tally.
Yes, exactly. Okay.
Well, I thought the
Tally does
secretary,
get to them.
I'm sorry to interrupt, but I thought I've talked to secretaries who actually see the emails and keep the tally. And again, I always put it in the subject line, yes, yes, HB7, or yes, or no, whatever, and just keep it really short, but also put, if they keep reading the subject line, you know, what the bill is, the title of the bill, and then I put something in the email. But I was told by a secretary, they tally the emails also, so maybe that's incorrect. As far as calling, I mean, you know, here we are. It's not a professional legislature. And I've called my senator several times. The phone keeps ringing, no answer. Or I get music and not even a way to leave a message.
Yeah.
Mm.
Okay,
Oh,
well, probably put, if you can't get through by phone, then putting vote yes on or vote no on in the subject line is
Mhm.
the best.
Exactly.
Okay,
Cheryl.
Carol, your turn.
Thank you. I agree. I always put the vote I have at the top in the subject line so they see that. I also send my email to the sponsors of the bill so they know there are people watching it and following up on it. And last year I didn't get much word back from the people I emailed to, but this year I have had half a dozen of the committee members or the sponsors call me back or email me back and say, thanks, Cheryl, I appreciated your opinion, or that was a good letter, or you made some good points. And that tells me that we are getting through to them and they are listening to us. I think most of the secretaries, if they're halfway decent, they are tallying the responses by email or phone calls into the office. And so I think things we do make a difference. We don't always see it, but collectively, I think we've had an impact. So keep it up, everybody.
Thanks, Cheryl. Yeah, some of those, I've been surprised at how helpful some of those committee secretaries are. Friendly and helpful and knowledgeable. So, you know, Tom.
I actually happened to be working at San Ildefonso when the whole incident happened with Governor Mountain. There's a whole lot going on behind that. He sat and never, ever wavered in terms of sitting and waiting for the justice system to work for it. He never attempted to move away from it. It's just going, people are running from this. It's like the scary thing. It's like there's a a child predator down the street that got charged because they had sex. I mean, it's a red flag it's not appropriate for him. It really isn't, and people aren't taking the time to know what this story is. He totally. I mean, it was a bad situation, and he got too drunk and he didn't know what happened. But he in no way shirked being responsible if that's how he was. What happened? There was political shenanigans going on with it within the Pueblo, of which there very easily she could have been put up to do it. It was his ex-girlfriend. It's the mother of his kids that was involved. There wasn't a history of this at all before this, and so and the Pueblo, I can tell you, Pueblo leadership is horrific with women. I mean, I can understand where at first blush that this story is like, because I've worked for 25 years for various Pueblos, and their leaders take advantage of women all the time. And so I can understand how on the surface that brings up a whole lot of this stuff, but it's not the case with James Mountain.
Yeah. Well, thank you for that. Yeah, we met James Mountain some years ago. I can't remember what it was in relationship to, but we liked him. But, I think in this case, we have to go with the women on this task force, and it really doesn't matter whether or not
the facts don't matter, that just because people are scared, we can't do it.
No, I'm just saying
somebody good can't serve because people are scared of them.
No, I'm saying we, as most of us on this call, white people, I think need to just support the Native women who feel really uncomfortable with this. I don't think it's something, I don't feel comfortable going against that, even though I liked him when I met him, because, we just don't really know exactly what happened. And at this point, I don't think it's about what happened. I just think this is a trigger for a lot of these women. So it's unfortunate all around, because he probably could have been a good leader if that wasn't in his past. So
right. I mean, but it's like, oh, they're socialists. So how many of Biden's nominees have been targeted?
I just want to cut this off. I'm going to cut this off because saying that someone who's accused of rape is the same as being accused of being a socialist is beyond the pale for me.
Yeah.
I
Sorry.
think I want to stand with what Roxanne's saying. We're not trying to weigh in on whether he did anything wrong or not. There's a perception, and there are people who are
I don't think it's our
stakeholders
place
in this process that have a position that they've expressed, and I think we need to honor it.
Yeah, I think we just need to honor those women on the task force, and I don't think it's our place to intervene. But thank you for sharing your opinion. And and we do need to end because it is.
I'm hungry.
Yeah, and we don't usually run over. We try to stick to our 7 o'clock ending time, and we haven't been able to do that tonight. So I apologize to everybody. Thank you for those of you who stayed on. 2.5 weeks left.
Please don't apologize. We are toward the end of the legislature. They're staying late. It's okay. And you have given us all permission to come or go and leave. And Tom, I'd like to have you voice your opinion about that in the letter to the editor or something. That would be an appropriate place for your idea.
I think you're right, Elizabeth. Thank you, everybody. Great to see you.
See you next
Join
week.
us again next week. Take
The
care.
link is already up.
Thanks,
for next
Marielle.
week's huddle. Bye-bye, everybody.